3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. What would happen if someone got all 20 of these rings? Today we will explore this rather strange idea together. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today's video feels definitely more like an April Fool's type of video for sure, but I'm going to attempt to seriously answer this strange question. A strange thing, especially if we are assuming that the hypothetical person we are talking about here is wearing the 20 rings on their 10 fingers and 10 toes. That's how I'm going to imagine this whole thing going down. Any sources used in this video will be in the description and cards, so please check those out. I know that in writing this I had to check a lot of articles wherever I could find it on what people thought about this, and kind of put their ideas with or against my own, so please check those out. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Chad Stonehammer II, a dwarf of Erebor, stands over his fallen opponents. All 9 Nazgul, Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel, the 7 dwarven lords, and even Sauron himself, and he loots their rings of power. What would happen next? I mean, no, but for real, we have to start this video by making so many assumptions right away. If someone was, somehow, able to gather all 20 rings to themselves, man, elf, dwarf, hobbit, orc, or any other being that could do this, without being absolutely destroyed by one of the many ring bearers themselves, let's explore how each ring might impact that person separately and together with the others. Now, I will be honest, this video will be so full of tangents and theories, ideas that I have about what might happen. To some degree, a lot of my Middle-earth Explained and theory videos are about me attempting to garner what lore I can and tie it all together into a thesis that makes sense and answers some sort of question, with of course a bit of theorizing and conjecture here and there, but honestly this video will mostly be conjecture, as Tolkien's works deal heavily in soft magic. This idea from fictional writing that sees magic as fluid and ambiguous, something that is rather undefined and left up to readers' interpretation. And this video, more than many of my other ones, will really illustrate this aspect of Middle-earth. There are so many different things that we can imagine these rings to all do individually, and together, well, we'll get there. I've done what research I can and corroborated my ideas with those Reddit articles and the like, linked in the description, but there is definitely no one answer to this strange question, so let's go ahead and try our best. So again, assuming someone in Middle-earth did their best impression of Thanos and took the Rings of Power like Infinity Stones, here's what I think would happen. Let's start with the Elven Rings of Power. By wearing Gandalf's ring Narya, the Ring of Fire, the Rings Bearer, as we'll call them, would have the power to encourage and inspire others to a very powerful degree, instilling that sort of inner fire in their hearts, even as Gandalf himself did. Potentially, they could receive some sort of elemental fire magic, depending on how we interpret the Ring of Fire, but again, it's definitely left up to interpretation. But we definitely know that Gandalf was able to inspire others with it, so there you go. Next, the Rings Bearer would potentially gain healing or decay prevention powers from Vilya, the Ring of Air from Elrond. Gil-galad at one time possessed the Rings of Fire and Air both, and perhaps that is what made him so formidable as well, but perhaps it also had little effect. Again, mayhaps our Rings Bearer here would gain some sort of wind or air powers, similar to those of Manwë, those that affect the breath of the world. Finally, with Nenya, the Ring of Adamant and Water, the Ring of Galadriel, the Rings Bearer would gain the ability to strengthen a realm, perhaps, as well as potentially the control over mists and waters, just as Galadriel was able to conceal and protect Lothlorien with her ring. Perhaps this ring also lent itself to the power Galadriel used in her Mirror of Water to predict what would become of the future. With the 3 Elven rings, the only rings that were truly holistically used for good in Middle-earth, one might be the fairest of all ring bearers, with access to really great altruistic powers and perhaps elemental powers, those of fire, air, and water. But of course, this Rings Bearer would be far too ambitious to stop there. They would continue to put rings on their fingers and toes. So let's look at what would happen with the rings of the Nazgul. Potentially, and again, this is speculation based on what we have from the books, the Rings Bearer could use the Rings of the Nazgul through their control over them with the One Ring to prevent themselves from dying. While the Rings Bearer would not retain full life, it is possible that they could inflict on themselves the same sort of wraith-like life that prevents permanent death, so long as the One Ring has dominance over the 9, and that is the will of the bearer of the One Ring. So, the Rings Bearer themselves. That all depends, of course, again, on how the bearer uses that One Ring as well, which we'll get to. These rings would also likely give the Rings Bearer some innate access to the ability to instill terror in others, and Morgul magic as well. Since the 7 Dwarven Rings were made by the Gwaith y Myrdain and Sauron in the same way as the 9 for men, potentially they would just have the same effect on the Rings Bearer, but it is also possible that the traits given to those dwarves would also be given to the Rings Bearer. Thus they might become greedy, yet more prone to finding valuables and riches. Finally, we come to the last ring, the One Ring, and the final pinky toe that it would be placed on. The One Ring would give the most power, obviously, to the user out of all of the rings, and would determine some of the effects of the other rings of power. As we see with Sauron, Isildur, Gollum, Bilbo, Frodo, and Sam, the ring generally has many of the same attributes, with slight variations. For instance, all except Sauron seem to be able to become invisible in the seen world, and rather went to the unseen realm, yet Frodo's vision atop Amunhen became heightened, whereas Sam's hearing outside of Shelob's lair became heightened instead of his vision. What we know about the ring is that it was ultimately Sauron's greatest weapon and his greatest weakness. It was such a valuable failsafe for him, for so long as it survived, his malice and his spirit endured, which was almost a guarantee, as the ring corrupted all those in its presence, especially those with great innate power and will. Sauron would win, in the end, over our Rings Bearer here, but I must say that, through the One Ring, they would be able to take much power unto themselves, and through the extension of such power through the other rings, likely they would instantly fall into darkness, becoming wraith-like. Yet, depending on the power and will of the bearer, they could theoretically manipulate and utilize the power of Sauron's spirit that flowed through the One Ring, as well as his malice and will which had seen the greater 16 rings, those of men and dwarves, created, and the ringcraft of which saw the elven rings created. Yet we are again assuming that this is someone of great strength and will, someone such as a Maya or Aragorn or the like. If it wasn't, I am almost certain that all of these rings together themselves would simply crush the person and their will, and would likely slay them or at least break their minds and spirits. The rings of power in many ways seem like conduits of the powers of the one wielding them, as well as the manifestations of some of the intent, will, and malice of the ring lore of Sauron behind their creation, and the Lord of the One Ring who controlled them. That is why this is so hard to predict, and again it seems so much based on the One Ring, what powers the other rings might give the bearer of all 20. Therefore I must say that if you took a person of great power and lineage, strong will and intellect, one of the greatest people in Middle-earth, save the Valar themselves, they could probably conjure the extent of the innate powers of themselves and the Rings of Power through such rings, and send their dominion across Middle-earth, through being one of the mightiest of people upon it. Yet most would likely collapse under the sheer power and strength of the Rings of Power, and would be broken by the combined passive and active powers of these rings. That would be my guess, but it was fascinating to take a look at all of this. What do you all think would happen? Let me know in the comments below. And so, my friends, we come to the end of our tale on what would happen if someone got all 20 Rings of Power. From this tale, we see that we must be wary of the powers we little understand, for there is wisdom found in knowledge, just as there is wisdom in patience over haste at times. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts on the 20 rings and what would happen to the one that bore all of them at once? Could such a thing be possible, even? Let me know what you all think in the comments below. This is a really interesting topic. I really do like how the rings serve as artifacts of multiple levels in Middle-earth. On one level of writing, they are interesting trinkets of great power, yet on another, more meta level of writing, they are thematic and symbolic elements of the characters who bear them. That's what makes this question so interesting and weird. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some Weta or United Cutlery Lord of the Rings swords, statues, and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout. And please check out our merch and Patreon. Thanks to our Valar tier patrons and YouTube members: Peter Shepard, Blair Scout and Merton, John Hume, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Dale Davis, Kingswald Project, Theodore, Moon Viper, Andrew Carlisle, and Zoomi. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with a video essay on the Return of the King film, which came out 20 years ago. We will discuss its legacy and greatness, how it changed cinema while wrapping up the best trilogy of movies in the world. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.